This is Let's Talk Business with your host, Marc Ebinger. Now, here's Mark.
Welcome to Let's Talk Business, a show that highlights and promotes entrepreneurs to learn more about their vision, goals, and marketing strategy. Coming up on the show today, we're going to talk about the home care business. With the growing demand for quality care for our seniors, what's it like to start and run your own home care business? In studio with us today is Chad Hahlen, the owner of Hallmark Homecare San Antonio. Chad, first timer, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. This is your first podcast ever, right?
First ever.
All right, no pressure, man. You're going to do just fine. I'm your host, Marc Ebinger, the owner of Krukus Virtual Staffing, a company that specializes in hiring virtual assistants from outside the United States. Now, if you're a business owner and want to learn how to hire amazing virtual assistants from the Philippines, register for my free upcoming webinar by visiting our website at krukus.com. That's CRUKUS.com.
And I'm Howie Nestel. I own Sharkmatic Advertising. We do graphic design, web design, and search engine optimization. And when I say we do it, I have a team in San Antonio that does that. We've been in marketing. I've been in marketing for 3 decades now, and my team has completed 1,100 websites for more than 1,500 clients. And if you're a business owner in San Antonio or beyond, reach out to us at sharkmatic.com. I'm sure there's something we can help you with, especially if your website is not bringing you leads.
Quick reminder to follow the Let's Talk Business podcast on all major podcast platforms and social media where you can catch video versions of the show. You can get to everything easily by visiting our website at satalkradio.com. It's funny because I just said this a little while ago when I was playing around. Now, if you're going to be in the San Antonio area on Thursday, May 16th, be sure to join us at the next Let's Talk Business Mega Mixer. We're expecting probably 200. We're going to try and max out at 250. We shall see. Local business owners and entrepreneurs to on-site to mix, mingle, and connect with each other to do more business. You can get all the information from our website at satalkradio.com. Now, a quick shout-out to Nikki Kinney at Blown Balloons and Blooms, one of our gold sponsors for our upcoming event on Thursday, May 16th. Nikki creates luxury balloon backdrops for all kinds of holiday celebrations and special events, including high school graduations, which are coming up soon. Now, Nikki's going to be doing something very special for the upcoming mixer, but it's a surprise, and they're not telling me anything on it. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. If you're looking for that special balloon wow factor at your next event, reach out to Nikki on Instagram at blown_SATX. What are you going to say, Howie?
One, I need her contact because I already have upcoming events that need balloons.
Sweet.
Number one. Number two, the other cool thing about the mega mixer that we do, and this will be the second one that we do. The first one, from the $10 that each person paid to be a part of it, we donated 100% of the proceeds to a nonprofit. And this upcoming one, if we get 200 people, we'll donate $2,000 to Discovery Camps, a camp for kids battling cancer. And we find these nonprofits that can use the money, and they're fully vetted. They've been, here for a long time. If you want to know about them, discoverycamps.org. But that's one way we pay it forward. But the real reason to come and show up and spend $10 is so you can have a margarita with Mark and have some nice food, and more importantly, connect with business people that you can actually do business with. And that's what we hear from the last podcast mixer, that people met other business owners that they're actually doing business with. And that's the whole idea behind a mixer, is to really connect with people and do business with them.
I got a funny story about that mixer, by the way. Last Friday, I was at the First Friday Network, which is a networking event for the home care space. And I met this lady. She owns a senior placement service. And we were talking about getting together, have a cup of coffee and, network. And she says, oh, and I've got to invite you to this thing on May 16th. This guy named Marc Ebinger. No, by the way, he's got a podcast. You really need to get on. And I said, I'm on Monday at 11:30.
Small world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what
right.
we want. Giving back to the community and participating in the business community is so much fun. We do a lot of networking, but this is another way that we can get the podcast. We can, I guess, leverage the podcast to get more and more involved. But I also want to give a quick shout out to my newest LinkedIn connection. So Lisa Benson from Texas follows or helps fellow veterans with their digital marketing strategies for their business. Also, Shannon Gardner with One Tom Plumber here in San Antonio, Texas. So I'm excited to connect with you guys and look forward to networking. All right, so Chad Hahlen, you're in the home care business. We'll get into that, but let's start with your background. Tell me a little bit about your professional background and how you ended up where you're at now.
Sure. I graduated with an undergraduate degree from the University of Akron and in accounting, and I sat behind a desk for 2 years, and that was long enough to know I didn't want to do that. So I joined the sales force for that company that I was working with, and the rest has been history. For 25 years, I've led and developed sales teams in the financial technology space, and I had an opportunity over about a year ago to really assess what it is I wanted to do with my career and the rest of my working years. And I evaluated several businesses. And my wife and I came across Hallmark Homecare, and it really resonated. And it resonated because we watched my dad and my mother struggle the last 2 years of my dad's life. And ultimately, my mom became my dad's primary caregiver at age of 73. And it destroyed their last 2 years of their lives. It was very difficult on both of them. And I firmly believe if they had home care, they both would have lived longer. And so this became it became personal to me. And so we started Hallmark Home Care because we know how important it is to assist seniors and other clients in those final years of their lives when it matters the most.
So it sounds like it might have been a good business decision to get involved with Hallmark, but it seems like it's transitioning to more of a calling for you.
It is. It's a privilege to help these clients. The feedback that we get and the testimonials are, you guys are really helping me with all of the things I can't do. They're living better lives while their caregivers are there.
Yeah, well, there's a certain level of dignity, too, that when your spouse doesn't have to be your primary caregiver that you retain when your spouse is not having to provide that, or a child, because sometimes adult kids provide that. And to be quite honest, because we're not medically trained or whatever it is, we may miss, how to give the medication dosage, confusing, especially if we are running our own lives. Now we're trying to take care of somebody. We're not going to do a great job.
110%. We get contacted by adult children all the time, and they all say the same thing. My parents need help. I can't do it. I have my own children that I am raising. My parents wouldn't want us to be this involved. How can you help? And that starts the conversation.
Let's talk a little bit about the business model now. Are you guys a franchise or what? So, because Hallmark is a recognizable brand anyway, is that the Hallmark we're thinking of, like, the cards and all that stuff?
No cards and no movies, at Christmas time. Hallmark Home Care was founded about 12 years ago, and the model was perfected by the founder over the course of 12 years. And, of course, they went to roll it out, and they sold their first franchise on March of 2020. Well, we all know what that was. And
my gosh.
Yeah, they pushed pause because this in-person model that they had created now had to go completely remote. And so they waited for about 3 years, refined that model again, and then took it out in January of 2023. And right now, we're in over 100 markets in the U.S.
How much of San Antonio are you taking up?
All of it.
All of it. Okay.
Yep.
And so, tell me about that process. So you obviously decided this is what you wanted to do. You chose the franchise. How has that been? Has the franchise been was it everything you thought it would be? Was it harder than you thought it would be? Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, the team out in Irvine, California, the franchise company of Hallmark is fantastic to work with. Everything that I have asked for, I've gotten. We're engaged with them on numerous projects right now to really develop the offering and the brand. A lot more to come on that. But yeah, I have access to the entire C-suite. If I wanted to call Steve Everhart, the owner and the founder, I've got his cell phone number and I call him. In fact, I have several times, and it's always fun. He's always challenging, right? He's done this now for 50 years. He founded Seniors Choice, which is a traditional agency of home care, before founding Hallmark Home Care. So he's got a lot of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and is a resource for all of the franchisees.
And Chad, you talk about the model, right? That they developed this model over a long period of time, then they released it or tried to roll it out at the beginning of the pandemic, March 2020. But it wasn't until a couple years later, that they actually put it into play. Can you talk a little bit about that model? And is it a differentiator? Is it something that is not found in the marketplace? And why should people care about Hallmark Healthcare, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the model is different than what's in the marketplace. And that's why, quite honestly, we went with Hallmark Home Care. It was an industry disruptor. And how so? Well, a traditional agency, if you go down the street and hire an agency to take care of your mom and dad, they have employees. And those employees, they may not match well with your parents. They may, don't know, but they've got to place them. And so the agency employs the caregiver, not the senior. Hallmark does it differently. We are a bit of a recruiter and a matchmaker. Mark probably, appeals to you. So what we do is we do a full senior assessment, and then we go out and we find an independent caregiver who works as an independent contractor and put them in direct employment with that senior. So the senior is actually employing them on a contract basis, 1099 basis. And so there's a lot more flexibility to that care. The care is only limited to what that senior asks for and needs and what that caregiver is willing to do. So there's no middleman getting in the way saying, nope, sorry, caregiver, you can't do this. Let me give you an example. Had a client that was getting discharged from the hospital at 1 p.m. on a Friday. She was self-discharging. Why? Because she had a 3 p.m. hair appointment, standing hair appointment for 30 years. The daughter and the client, my client, the patient, were arguing about this hair appointment. Daughter says, I'm not driving you down there, Mom. No way. I've got other things to do. We can't do it. I said, well, what if I can get my caregiver there in time to make it your hair appointment? Her eyes lit up. Well, driving that client in her car 30 miles to her hair appointment is something that not all home care agencies can do. You can't drive the client's car. Well, at Hallmark, you can, because the client asked for it, caregiver was willing to do it, we made it happen. It's little things like that.
So the business model is intriguing me because I can see definitely some similarities to what it is that I do.
Yes.
Because I'm a recruiter. Now, is the person, the client, paying the caregiver directly, or do they pay you and you pay the caregiver?
Yeah. We have all of the technology behind the scenes that facilitates that entire relationship, all the way from the scheduling to the invoicing, collecting the money. We withdraw it out of the senior's account, and then we pay the caregivers on behalf of that senior. So that technology is actually working for the senior, but we facilitate all of that.
And that's where your profit margin comes out of that as well, right?
Correct.
And what's the service you're actually providing that justifies your cut?
Great question, Mark. Number one, we recruit. We maintain a large registry of caregivers that are ready to go on a moment's notice, and we'll get back to that in a minute, why that's so important and so different. But then number two, we're fully vetting these caregivers. Because we don't train anyone, we only recruit and place caregivers with at least 5 years experience. Okay, so they're highly qualified caregivers. We run 4 different background checks. We do a national criminal database search. We do the DMV search, make sure there's no DUIs. We do the home care database or healthcare database, and what that is if that caregiver has ever been accused of or found that they had abused a patient. And then, of course, the Social Security number database. So make sure that they're not using someone else's alias.
Yeah. And you're protecting both sides, because this way, if you're taking the money from the senior's account, you're guaranteeing that that person's going to get paid. But if the caregiver doesn't provide the service, then you don't have to pay them.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Versus somebody knows somebody and then they place that person in somebody's home and there's no intermediary managing that relationship, then they can start accusing, hey, the senior didn't pay me, and then they get into an argument or whatever.
Let's talk about the fee structure.
Sure.
So not the exact pricing, but as far as, is there a lump sum for the recruiting and then there's a monthly fee, or how does that work?
It's all included.
Okay.
It's all included. They pay a $500 deposit and we get started right away. And then it's an hourly charge. The market rate in San Antonio is anywhere between $27 we've heard as high as $36 an hour, depending on the acuity of care that is needed. If they have to hire a med tech, that has a little bit higher pay range and qualifications, then we will place a med tech. But if a traditional CNA will do, then
And that pricing hourly is not horrible, really. Especially now, is there a certain minimum number of hours per day or per week that you have to contract?
there's not a contractual minimum, and Hallmark's different that way, right? There's not a minimum contractual hours or charge. But what we find is, in order to get a quality caregiver at the shift, they like about 4 hours because then they're going to have to drive somewhere else to get 4 hours. Whereas the Hallmark model is so unique because it is a contractor model. What we specialize in is those 6 to 24 hour cases, because that one caregiver, if they choose to work 12 hours, they can show up one shift, work their 12 hours, go home, show up the next day, work another shift, 12 hours. So they're able to get longer hours at one stop, and it doesn't cost the senior more because they're a contract employee. There's no overtime.
In a situation where you were like short notice, then how does that person pick them? Because you're like, I know I can get somebody here in that short amount of time. Yeah. That's going to obviously limit their choices, but do you just give them like a panel and say, hey, take a look at these folks and pick one, or would you pick one for them on a short notice type situation?
Yeah. We've had it both ways, quite honestly. We've had it where somebody has asked us to recruit for them. They give us about a week before they were going to get discharged, and we were able to go out and recruit a team. And this was for a 24-hour case. And what's amazing about that is we only recruited 4 caregivers. We allowed that client to visit with them. They went to the hospital room, believe it or not, and they visited with them. And the client actually said, yes, I like all 4 of those girls. Now, how did she know? She knew because a year earlier, she had home care, 24-hour care from a traditional agency. Okay? Well, because of the overtime, they were putting 6 caregivers a day in that client's home. It was awful. It was just a revolving door.
Oh, 6 different ones.
Yeah, so what we were able to do for her is staff her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with only 4 caregivers. You had a Monday through Thursday shift, and then you had a Friday through Sunday crew. And so she absolutely loved it.
Other than, let's say, people with good economic means to pay for this out of pocket, what other ways, Chad, have you seen that people pay for home care?
Yeah, great question, Howie. Like any other, you're planning for any other, large financial purchase, time is important. Talk to your financial planner sooner rather than later. I met a financial planner this weekend. He was in town for the Valero Texas Open, and we were chatting, and I asked him, how many of your clients have long-term care insurance? And he said 60%. And I said, well, why not the other 40? He says, because they can afford the care. Okay, so they're fortunate enough to be able to be in a financial position where they could afford it. Now, let's say you're behind the 8 ball and you didn't think about this, you didn't know long-term care insurance existed. Okay, so what else is there? There are other debt instruments that family or that senior could leverage, such as a reverse mortgage. Okay, let's say, somebody is under the impression that they can't afford long-term care. Well, what do they have to do? They got to sell their home, and that's where they've raised their family. That's where their memories are. They truly want to age in place, but they don't think they have the option. They want to sell their home and go into an assisted living center. That could be anywhere between $6,000 and $10,000 a month, depending on the need. Okay, well, why not take a reverse mortgage out on that piece of property? And now you've got some, equity that you could use to stay in your home and get, anywhere between, for $10,000 a month, you're looking at 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
That's a lot of care. You don't go from, I don't need care to all of a sudden I need, 12 hours. It's gradual. And so, have that conversation with your parents or your children and start talking about it sooner rather than later, and always consult your financial planner if you have one.
Mm-hmm. What about insurance agents? Do you find them to be good referral partners, people who sell life insurance and that kind of stuff, and long-term care insurance? Yeah,
they do, because they're generally the first ones to know that their client is going to be needing some care, because those phone calls have come in. But mostly the demand is there. We're getting notified of the demand by the case managers in the hospitals. Mark, you mentioned, short term. What if you get just a short notice? We've had case managers call us and say, his client's getting discharged. They need home care tomorrow. And that's where that long registry of caregivers comes in. We're able to say, yes, we can help you. And in fact, the lady that wanted her hair done at 3 o'clock on a Friday, she was a 24-hour case, and we actually staffed her entire case within 3 hours.
Let's talk about your staffing a little bit. So how are you finding these folks? What's that process look like?
Yeah, various job boards out there, but there's also a new kind of a LinkedIn for caregivers that we're trying out. Of course, the best caregiver source is other caregivers. And what's unique about Hallmark is because we don't have the large overhead that a traditional agency has, we're able to charge the seniors a little bit less. They're saving anywhere between 15 and 20%. But then also we're able to negotiate on behalf of that senior an above market pay rate for that caregiver. So I talked to a caregiver last week in a recruiting call. She was making $12 an hour at her current job. When I told her that ours, on behalf of that senior, are usually getting about 16 to 19 an hour, she's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that. That's life-changing money for these caregivers," and it truly is. And so the recruiting process, Mark, we're word of mouth. When those caregivers say, "Hey, Hallmark is able to get you an above market rate," the caregivers are coming. We got a pretty good stream that we're putting on our registry at all times. And then, once we interview them, we check 3 of their references. We do the 4 background checks that we mentioned before. And of course, the senior gets to interview them if they want. So by the time they're placed with that senior, we're confident that they're going to be the right fit.
What about client acquisitions? How are you getting your clients now?
Oh, the client acquisition. Oh, okay. We are working with assisted living centers, case managers, social workers at hospitals, rehab centers, all throughout the city. The need is there. And, you get somebody that goes from a hospital into a skilled nursing facility. Well, chances are they're going to need help after they get home or after they're done at the skilled nursing facility as well, and they need help at home. And so we're working with, the social workers and case managers at SNFs, they're called.
What does that look like, though? You say you're working with them. Like, are you spending time there? What kind of?
Yeah.
From a business perspective, if like you're doing this, is it boots on the ground? Is it SEO? I mean, how are you doing?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. It's myself. We recently hired a marketing director to go out and start making some calls, and she had 16 years experience in the home health field, not the home care is a big difference, but the home health field. And so she's talking with all of her contacts. I'm out there networking with all of the case managers and other owners as well, and just talking. And it's amazing. The phone rings.
Yeah, it's such a crapshoot when you try to do it yourself.
Oh yeah.
And we should change the name from Let's Talk Business podcast to the Don't Do It Yourself podcast. Really, because we bring in experts that tell us either horror stories or great stories of positive results because they were involved.
Yep.
We had some plumbers, same thing. They saved a client they saved them $9,000, $8,000. And we know them. We know the client, we know the plumber. So we know it's all true. But when you bring in the right people and the right experts, a few years ago, my dad had a surgery. He's now 90. He lives alone. And do you know anybody? Do you know anybody? And I called the traditional home services company, and they had all this paperwork and commitment and contracts and all this stuff that, my sister finally knew somebody who knew somebody. But, how did we vet them? We talked to them on the phone. We sat and met with them in person, but we don't really know.
Right.
Turned out okay, but we didn't really save any money compared to what you're talking about. Quick side note. Very, talk about a God-wink coincidence. I'm coming out of downtown. I went to go see my general practitioner. I won't be needing home services just yet from Hallmark, but I see a car accident between a commercial vehicle and a little Honda. So I saw that the commercial vehicle went through a red light. So I pull over. I'm saying, "Hey, look, guys, here's my card. You went through a red light. Whatever. So call the cops, whatever. I'm here as a witness and all that stuff." So the guy that was in the little Honda goes, "Do you have a dad that da-da-da?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, I was the one that provided the services after he had his surgery."
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, "Wow."
Small
He goes,
world.
"Thank you so much. God bless you for being here and for seeing and for stopping and all that stuff." I'm like, "Well, if we ever need you, I want a discount, or maybe I'll just send them to you because you probably want to recruit people like that, right?"
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's
Please
talk
do.
about what home care is. So you mentioned earlier a difference between home care and health care
Yeah,
And home health.
and home
Right.
health care,
Yeah.
right? So let's talk about what is home care.
Yeah. Home care is non-medical assistance with activities of daily living. In the industry, they're called ADLs. Okay. It's the bathing, the grooming, hair, teeth, oral care, meal preparation, cooking, grocery shopping, all of those things that are non-medical.
Chad, but what about taking medicines on time? Are they allowed to?
Yeah, that's
If the
medication.
okay, yeah. So if the homeowner
Mm-hmm.
and the patient asks the provider, say, "Hey, please remind me of my medicines and get me water and all that," they're allowed to do that, or that's not allowed by law because it's
Absolutely. It's called medication reminders. Now, technically, by law, the traditional agencies can only say, "Hey, Mrs. Smith, it's time for you to take your pills." Because of the Hallmark model, we've actually got a client that says, "Hey, can you please help my mother administer her insulin to her?" Well, the caregiver happens to be a diabetic, so she said, "Yeah, absolutely, we could give her insulin, not a problem at all." That's a big difference. Doing things like changing a bandage. Well, that's wound care. That's home health. Okay. Well, you're showering at 10 o'clock at night and you get your bandage wet and needs to be changed. Try getting a home health agent in there at 10 o'clock at night to change your bandage. With the home care from Hallmark, that caregiver can assist that senior with changing into a dry bandage. All things that, flexibility, Howie, is so
Great.
important. And
Love it.
Hallmark allows that caregiver the flexibility.
And you don't know that you're going to need all this stuff until you need it, and then you don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And then I actually had a situation where I had a bandage and it had to be whatever, not changed, but filled. It was like where they put gauze in there or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody in my household would help me with that. So I just drove to the ER, not to the hospital, but to an ER, to a clinic. I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" "Great." I go, "Can you all do this for me?" They're like, "Yeah, it's going to cost like $130. I'm like, "That's fine."
Take it out of my kid's allowance.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Take it out of the will. Yeah, I'm not going to leave my kids.
Well, and how you mentioned that will, and let's revisit the finances for just a second. Every parent wants to leave their children something, right? Leave them better off than what
Yes.
they receive. The importance of talking to your financial planner is paramount because there are whole life policies, or even inexpensive term policies that you can start paying that enables you to leave something to your children, but at the same time afford home care. And so again, it's so important to talk to your financial planner.
Okay, now I have a question because we talked about wills and all that stuff. Is there something in the agreement that precludes the senior from leaving their home care provider money in their will? Because what if the home care provider, is, or get married to a senior, 27-year-old home care provider
Yeah.
and a 93-year-old patient, and then next thing you know, they hit it off. Is that because since their contract and you guys are hands off, that's on them?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's nothing more different than the plumbers that you guys had in a little
Right.
bit earlier. We can't stop that. We're just simply a recruiter and a matchmaker.
Matchmaker, probably wrong words there, man.
Yeah.
So how big is the demand for, in this industry for home care? Is it
Yeah.
growing? Is it shrinking?
No one's getting any younger. No one's getting any healthier. The demand is outpacing the supply of caregivers, which is why it's so important to choose the right home care agency to make sure that you can always have a caregiver when you need it. Knock on wood, we've been very fortunate. We have not had an uncovered shift in the 8 months that we've been doing this, and so that's hugely important. We talked to a caregiver that worked for one of our competitors, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, we had uncovered shifts all the time." And like, to me, that's That's just awful. I've covered shifts before. I've gone down and
I was
sat
about
with
to
my
ask you
clients.
that
Absolutely.
if you've covered shifts.
Yeah, yep. Last 2 weekends ago, I was driving my client to her standing Saturday hair appointment at noon, and went over to HEB, did her grocery shopping while she was getting her hair done.
Yeah, that's I gave a talk to a group of entrepreneurs about that. It's about working in your business versus on your business. But as an entrepreneur, you have to you have to be in the weeds sometimes. And I've been in the weeds in my business for 30 years. That's how you maintain control. That's how you understand what's going on in your business. That's how you set an example for others. And you don't miss shifts. You don't miss deadlines. You don't get a bad reputation. You don't get bad reviews because you're taking care of your clients.
I just put myself in that adult child's position. What would I want from my mom and dad? I wouldn't want them unattended, especially if I'm paying for it and it was scheduled. So I would expect the owner of that home care agency to show up and do the job.
That's right. So when folks are deciding on a home care, agency to help out, what should they be looking for?
Yeah, great question, Mark. Flexibility. And we talked a little bit about it. Doing what the senior needs when they need it. Imagine if your senior parent had Parkinson's. Very difficult with the tremors to trim their nails, right? Well, the flexibility of having an agency that can do that nail trimming and to not be a medical procedure. Taking a look at the responsiveness, can your agency fill a 24-hour shift or 24-hour case in 3 hours? So that's very important. Affordability. What's the price? It's very important that you align, Howie, as you mentioned. You didn't save much money with the way that you went. So, caregivers working for the client, that's the flexibility that you really need. And there's only one agency in town that delivers that, and that's Hallmark.
So why is it important to make, because that decision process can go, maybe they didn't know about you or whatever, but they make a decision to go with one, and it's not the right decision. It's like, how bad is that?
That makes all the difference in the world. The uncovered shifts, the quality of caregiver. You're getting somebody that's fresh out of CNA school that doesn't have a month's experience. They don't know what to do. Okay, here's another part that's very important. The continuity of care. One of my 24/7 clients, she has had the same caregiver from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 5 days a week since January 6th. Why is it important? It's important because 2 Fridays ago, the caregiver who knows her very, very well noticed she was off. And then all of a sudden, she started to slur her speech. And so immediately she called 911, got an ambulance in there. The client had a TIA, which is a little mini stroke in the brain, right? And so that's why it's so important. This is a matter of life and death in some cases to get the right caregiver. Now, if we had 5 or 6 different caregivers in there, last week alone, she might not have noticed, and that stroke could have gone on for a little while.
There's also an emotional component to that too, because if you're going with one agency, you've got maybe some care, maybe it's not going well, or maybe it's on and off, good or bad, and then you have to switch. Now you got to do it all over again. You got to meet new folks and this whole thing. So I would think that there's an emotional component to that as well.
Absolutely, and especially with your memory care patients, right? I mean, their memory is degraded as a result of a neurodegenerative issue like Alzheimer's or dementia. And so it's hard for them to keep track of who's coming in and when, especially if they're trying to do this on their own. And we have patients that we go over their schedule with them. 20 minutes later, they're asking who's coming in, but they always know the person by their face and the name. And so that's very important.
Yeah, plus humans we're creatures of habit, so we like continuity and we like predictability. We want the same person.
Yeah.
And that's important. So what happens if a caregiver, for example, is going to be going on vacation? Do you put somebody else as a trial, or do you set up an interview process between the patient and the care provider to see if they would mind having this person in for a week while the other person goes out of town?
We've had both requests. Okay. I've had one client that says, do not send anybody that I have not met yet. Okay, great. So when I know that a vacation is coming up, I'll bring in 2 or 3 different caregivers, let them meet with the client, and let the client meet with them, and she selects one. Others are like, well, if it's just a week, you know what I like, Chad. Get me somebody here. And so we've done it both ways.
So let's talk about the process of obtaining the care, right? What does that process look like? Like, how long does it take? What are the services? What are the costs? I know there's no exact number because every case can be different, but give me like a general idea of costs if you can.
Sure.
And then, of course, we'll get into a little bit more of that, like how families can prepare for that.
Yeah. Let's tackle costs first. Anywhere between 27 and, was as high as 36 an hour. We've never been higher than 30. I can't imagine why you couldn't go out and recruit the right caregiver for $30 an hour, but there's some out there that are charging as much as 36. The process from the time that we get the phone call, we're usually meeting them within an hour or two, usually in the hospital room. We go down and we do a complete assessment, maybe a follow-up phone call with an adult child who's looking after things as well. Everybody's comfortable. Yep. All right. We sign a very small 4-page agreement, Howie. It's not long, that protects both parties. And depending on what they need, if they have some very specific needs, we may have to go out and recruit a caregiver. That process can take anywhere between 72 hours to 5 days. I always like to say a unicorn shows up in 3 days, right? But as long as 5 days. If they're in a need to make a hair appointment the next day by 3 p.m. Down in Lavernia, then it's really only going to be a couple of hours. We can staff a 24/7 case off of our registry. If they say, "Hey, Chad, we trust you. That's why we're hiring you," then we can get a 24-hour case staffed in 3 hours. We've done that several times now.
Okay, and then as far as what should a family expect? First of all, that's a very fast turnaround, which I think is awesome and super important. I would imagine you get a lot of the bulk of what you're doing is short notice, or no?
Yeah. Generally within 5 days. I think that's pretty short. But what happens is these seniors, they don't know when they're going to get discharged because the doctors can't tell them, and then all of a sudden they find out on a Tuesday that they're getting discharged on a Friday. And now their families are calling around, and they're calling me and 2 or 3 of my friendly competitors, and it becomes a bit of a circus. I always like to say when you called Hallmark, the cavalry's on its way. We're going to be able to take care of you right away.
What can the family expect? So let's if I've got a relative that's going through this process, you guys come in, you take over. What's the responsibilities on the family member now? What do we have to do, pay attention to, or whatever?
Yeah, as much or as little as you want. Okay. First, we give you total access to our information system. So you have complete transparency and visibility into your parents' care, okay? So that's completely up to them. We'll work with them to establish that. But what the family can expect is us to be, we over-communicate, I always have in my business career. You over-communicate. You let the family know what to expect. You find out what the family's expectations are first, and then you meet those expectations. So, do you want weekly updates? Do you want daily updates? But generally after, the first couple of weeks, everything settles in, and, I'm making proactive calls every couple of weeks to let them know. Sometimes medications change. Sometimes schedules change for the senior. They need to go to a doctor's appointment, so the caregiver doesn't need to show up. The child's going to take the mother to a doctor's appointment. All of those things just require us to stay in touch with the senior and the family.
Have you had any cases where it's really just the home care provider, or you're getting hired, Hallmark Home Care is getting hired to have somebody to sit and visit and be good company to a parent? Because a lot of seniors live alone, they lost a spouse, and they need that interpersonal connection with somebody.
It's called companion care.
Companion care.
Absolutely, we have it. And quite honestly, on our Saturdays, that's really what it is. It's somebody to help them, drive them, be a companion, help them with groceries, sit and chat. Yeah.
What about monitoring? So, do you guys install cameras? Is there, I've fallen and I can't get up type stuff? I mean, what's the monitoring you guys do?
Yeah, that is completely up to the family. There are cameras out there, that maintain the privacy of the senior, but they will detect a fall. And we've got several of those clients that have installed those cameras. Our caregivers don't mind. In fact, our caregivers appreciate being on camera so that they no accusations can be made, especially with memory care patients. It happens, things.
Yeah, they remember that they had, a gold plated something or other, and
Right.
it's not there, but they're remembering that from 1937, but it wasn't really around
Exactly.
in 2024.
For the overnight clients, just a simple sound monitor is extremely important. Where that caregiver might be doing some housework overnights while that senior is sleeping. Well, that senior needs to get out of bed and use the restroom at 3:00 in the morning. Well, then they just simply call, and that monitor is right there, and they hear it and answer the call.
So, anything that like stands out as if somebody's looking at hiring a home care, that would be a red flag. If they're interviewing a company or whatever, and what are some red flags that they should be like, oh, that's not a good idea. You know what I mean? That's not a good quality in a home care.
You mean
business.
other than the name's not Hallmark?
Yeah. Other than that one.
No. Responsiveness. If they're not getting back to you immediately, then what's going to happen if there's a call off on a shift? So being able to be in that hospital room within a couple of hours and working with your family immediately, that's the biggest red flag.
Yeah, have you had family members that have called you that seem to be sort of have a standoffish attitude about their parents, like or whoever they're going to provide the service for? They don't care. I just feel like I'm obligated to do it, but don't report to me. I don't want to know. Just here's the money.
We've had clients where their adult children said, "Look, my mom is still or dad is still independent. They've told me they want to handle this on their own. I'm here for you if you have any questions or concerns. Otherwise, just go ahead and work directly with mom and dad." And so we've respected that. And so far, it's worked out great. It's been my longest-term client.
Do you have situations where you guys are working alongside hospice as well, or are you guys out of the picture when hospice comes in? How does that work?
No, hospice patients can be on hospice a day or a year. Depending on once you're on hospice, you never come off of hospice. And so we've gotten asked to provide more of that companion care. Keep that patient fed, hydrated, comfortable during those last weeks of their lives. And some of those have turned into months-long engagements. And so, yeah, we work right alongside hospice. Hospice can only come in, a couple of days a week, 2-3 days a week for 1 to 2 hours to do their thing. And that's kind of a big difference between hospice and home care, home health and home care. Home care is always there for as long as you want them to be. The home health and the hospice, they come in, do their thing, and they leave.
So identify what is home health care then.
Yeah, great. We forgot to touch on that. Home health is more physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. After you get discharged, let's say for a hip replacement, they will send a physical therapist to your home 2 to 3 days a week to help you with physical therapy. And then they leave. They're not there helping you shower or, do your meals or prepare your meals, do anything, any of those activities of daily living. Where home care is important to work side by side with that home health physical therapist is on those days that the therapist is not there, they can ensure that you're doing the exercises that you're supposed to do and speed up your recovery.
Are you finding that a lot of people don't have any idea about home care and they totally miss out on that opportunity?
My parents. My parents were prime examples of that. They don't know they need home care. They don't know what home care is until the case manager tells them, hey, your doctor has ordered you to have home care for, 8 hours a day or 24 hours a day. And then it's like, wow, did I plan for that? I talked to several people that have been told they needed 24-hour care, but they hadn't planned for it and they couldn't afford it.
What happens then? They don't get it?
They don't get it. Yeah.
What about financing? Is there ways to do that?
There are some of those
The reverse
mortgages,
mortgages,
yeah,
but not anything through Hallmark.
Nothing through Hallmark, no.
Okay.
But it breaks your heart.
Yeah, because that's not a good loan business to get into
No.
because you're not going to get your money back.
Right, unless you take a mortgage out on the house,
if
which
there's
is what
life
the
insurance.
reverse mortgage is. Just
Right.
talk to Fonzie. Didn't he? Henry Winkler, remember the Fonz? I think
Yeah.
he does some commercials.
Tom
for,
Selleck has.
Or Tom Selleck, yeah, Tom Selleck,
Yeah.
Is
right?
he doing
Magnum
reverse
PI. Yeah, he doesn't do it. They hired him to do commercials.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Reverse mortgage.
No, but I know the two gentlemen in the industry that specialize in reverse mortgages are super guys. Happy to put somebody in contact with them.
All right. Well, anything else we left on the table that you wanted to bring up? I know you had some notes that you brought along as well.
No, we've covered everything.
covered it.
You guys are
Excellent.
comprehensive. You're professionals.
Man, look
Yeah.
at that.
I think
Yeah.
it was all the sodas I had this morning. I'm on it with my caffeine.
Right.
Yeah.
Now we get to go see the eclipse.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the eclipse? Is the world going to end or what?
No, I don't think we could be that lucky, could we?
Is it like Y2K? Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, right.
We
Well,
all think things are going to happen, and then they just don't.
I could tell you driving down here on I-10, going west or north on I-10 was already a parking lot. So
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because when I drove over here, but it was earlier, 9:30. There was nobody on the highways.
Well, hopefully, by now everybody's to where they need to be to start watching
Right.
it. It's happening
Yeah,
in
and
10 minutes.
it's cloudy as all get out. So
Yeah,
who knows? You're
That's
going to
right.
see it.
It is. 12:38, I think, is going to be complete darkness.
1:38,
1:38.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
complete darkness. Starts
Only-
at 12:30. So
Well, I think what you're doing is absolutely. I mean, my wife has lost both of her parents, right? And in the one, we looked. In my opinion, I was like, well, isn't that what hospice does? Right? That's what I thought. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So if I'm thinking that way, I was a cop for 30 years. You know what I mean? I always liked it when hospice was there because I figured that's just how things went. They're there for the end of it. It makes my job as a cop easier. But what you guys are doing is super important, and the awareness of it. Not only the awareness, but the planning. So, at
No,
least
like Chad says, it extends life, and I could see that. I could see that.
Quality of life, too.
Yeah, my dad is 90. He lives alone. My mom's 80. She lives alone. My mom's in great shape. But my dad, I could see just the last few years, he slowed down. He's already had a couple falls. One fall, he hit his head, and he decided to drive himself to the ER at 87. And so, but it was so valuable to have somebody stay with him. But that only happened because it was required by the doctor, and it was after a surgery. But then after that, he's like, never again.
I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. And we don't know. And we think we could still drive. We think we could still do everything ourselves because we've always done it ourselves. So I think there's a lot of education that's yet to be done out there about this and the importance of this and the quality of life. Like Mark says, it's true.
Yeah. So I'm going to challenge you to just network your butt off. I mean, go get it out there in front of as many people as possible. Constantly educate. I mean, I'm a fan of what you're doing. So
Thank you.
if
Well,
I can
challenge
help-
accepted.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, if folks want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
You give me a call, 210-888-9675, Hallmark Home Care, San Antonio.
What about a website, Facebook, LinkedIn?
www.hallmarkhomecare.com/121.
121.
Yep.
Why 1-to-1?
Because we are the 21st franchise in Hallmark.
Okay, gotcha. Not the 121st.
Not the 121st, but we know that we're going to need to go to triple digits here real soon.
Are you looking to expand anywhere else?
Right now, with the San Antonio market, the need is so great. I think we've bitten off as much as we can chew.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you get referrals from other markets that have franchises that know somebody in San Antonio because they have a client who's...
Happens
Okay.
all the time. Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, I appreciate it very much, Chad.
Thank you.
As we wrap up the show, a quick reminder to check out our latest podcast and catch video versions of the show anytime by visiting our website at satalkradio.com. It's going to be it for this one. You guys have a great week. We'll see you on the next one.